Hello and welcome to some random conversation on S24 Television. Today, I'm in one of the cities I love in the world because I studied masters here and I'm together with
Rob Watson.
Robert Singh. And because I'm a media person, I love to speak to people in the media, especially whether it is academics or the practical sense of it. And today I feel so excited after an informal conversation with you. And I want us to talk about the media ecosystem and talk a little bit about the similarities in the Nigerian media ecosystem and now Leicester. Let's say the UK generally, but it's going to be streamlined to Leicester because I know Leicester a bit. So if you're to describe the media ecosystem in Leicester, or if you say UK perspective and then come down to Leicester, what would you say?
Well, I always use this paint a picture is probably the best way to get this across. If you imagine a 1980s style shopping mall, American shopping mall, we call them precincts, shopping malls. And on the ground floor, everybody's walking around with their phones and their tablets, and that's social media, and they're all like zombies bumping into each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the top floor, there's Amazon and
All the big brands.
Google, all the big Apple, all the big companies,
Mhm.
Warner, all those things. And there's an escalator that goes up from the bottom
To the
to the
top.
top, but there's no routes into the middle levels. They're closed off. It goes directly up. And that's our policy at the moment. Local media in the UK is very under resourced and under supported. So people haven't got those routes. So the way that the technology is changing, the BBC, for example, is reducing in England. It's reducing its support for local radio. So BBC Radio Leicester doesn't do much reduced service locally. A lot of the production now comes from its regional base in Nottingham, and they talk about digitization first, but that is really often like it creates content which is generic rather than specific. So, for example, if you want to reach 80% of the Sikh population in the East Midlands, you have to come to Leicester and Oadby, which is just on the outskirts of Leicester, because that's where 80% of the Sikh population live.
Oh.
So, if you want to get down to that level, unfortunately, you can't anymore because most of it's regional, most of it's across the East Midlands. So, there's this gap about local media content. The other side of it as well is how people have opportunities to get involved with that media. So because if everything's done, so the Leicester Mercury is now produced in Derby, which is 30 miles away from Leicester. The BBC is in Nottingham, again, 30 miles away from Leicester. So you can't go and shake the hand of the journalists anymore. You can't go and find them in the local cafe or bar or whatever. You'd have to travel across to Nottingham, and they're doing things on desktops, and they get press releases and they rewrite the press release and they send that out. So they're not walking the streets. They're not living amongst the people. So there's a gap.
There's a
Big
gap,
gap,
a
yeah.
huge gap.
And the government recognizes this, and it's trying to do some investment within this, but it's often they focus on the legacy providers first, and they're not really looking at innovation for new people to come in and fill that gap.
I was going to ask where the problem is, but you've answered most of that. Let's look at a different perspective. You've mentioned that the local media is getting less visibility, unlike before, 30 miles away from Leicester, when you're supposed to be on the streets reporting what's going on in Leicester and focus is on international communities more. What do you think changed? And at
Well,
what point?
well, social media has come in, and social media organizes differently. So a lot of our traditional broadcast media was place-based, whereas a lot of things that we do on social media are identity or interest-based. So, for example, there's a new cafe opened up in Leicester as part of a work centre, and I tried to go to that cafe 3 or 4 times over about 3 months, and it was always full. It's like, why is this always full? It's packed. It's busy. They were advertising on TikTok, so they found their audience through different routes than you would do through the traditional media routes.
Wow.
So there's something about they understand how people use their social media in different ways, what their interests are, what they associate with, what their concerns are. So what kind of stories they respond to, how can you shape and bespoke that? And the danger with that approach is that, we know with social media is that you can create echo chambers where people are only talking to people of a similar
Mm-hmm.
point of view
Mm-hmm.
or experience. and you're not talking to people who are that broader point of view and experience, and you're not interrelating. So part of the challenge we've got in Leicester is that communities can become siloed and they become compartmentalized and separated. And the trick is to how do we get communities to talk across and bridge across those communities rather than just bonding for themselves?
That's really eye-opening. I think from where I'm coming from, the media landscape might be a little bit different because there are national mediums, there are regional mediums like the newspaper, the electronic, and also the print media. So I would just want us to explore a little bit what needs to change in terms of the narrative entirely, and if you consider community media perspective as well.
Well, if you think about where you get your stories from as a journalist, you probably we were talking about this at the event that John Costa did yesterday,
Mhm.
and we were talking with a colleague, and he recommended going onto an app called Nextdoor, which tells you what's going on in your neighborhood. Now, it's an international app, but it can come down to the neighborhood. You know, it go the postcode or the particular area, so you can look for things that are happening in the streets around where you
Mhm.
live. So the starting point for a presenter on a radio program or a journalist looking for stories would be to look at what's being said in those message boards, in
Mm.
those apps first, see what's happening there, and then go and talk to people in that area and start to try and engage with them. The thing with community media is it's really important that people have the opportunity to actually make their own media themselves.
Mhm.
So if they don't feel they're being represented in mainstream national media, these days, you don't have to wait for the BBC to come along and
Find
do it for you.
alternative.
We've got a
Affirm.
colleague over there holding the phone, recording the conversation. We've got a pair of microphones. It's not complicated anymore. We can make our own
Absolutely.
media. Ironically, there's a guy called, you might have heard him, Elon Musk,
Yes.
who's quite controversial, but he uses the phrase "be the media," and that's
Mm.
actually the tagline that an organisation I support called Better Media uses. As we've done this for a long time, it's like we are the media, and we have the skills to do this, and we can tell our own stories. But how do we do that in a way that's trusted, that's accountable, that isn't about exploiting people?
Mhm.
It isn't about extracting things out of people, but it supports and offers something. It regenerates our communities, and that's the kind of media that we need to invest in.
So storytelling is changing, right?
Oh yeah.
Every day evolving. And you've mentioned something very key. Nowadays, it's just press releases that is rebranded and as news pieces. Would you describe that as people becoming armchair journalists or something else?
Well, I was talking to Tina Barton yesterday, and she said the schools now having to do they call it tummy time, and they do 2 hours of physical activity with children because children are sitting around on the sofa looking at their tablets and screens too much. So they're not building up the inner core strength, and
Mm.
maybe that's where I need to do that as well. But people are sitting back and passively, and we've seen this. There's evidence from the national regulator in the UK, media regulator Ofcom. They've reported that there's less engagement now with social media as a lean forward activity because people are looking at reels and leaning back and they're viewing the video content passively. And it's like, how do we maintain an active level of media engagement where you're making things, you're sharing things, you're discussing things with people, hopefully in a nice way, rather than just sitting back and watching a lot of, I mean, at the moment, it's AI slop. You know, a lot of stuff is AI generated.
Yes, mostly.
It gets people's attention, but it fries your brain. You know, it's bad for you.
Unfortunately, it's really bad. So, I think in the course of our conversation, you made a key important note, and I would actually relate in a context for you. And because S24 is being built as a pan Nigerian, pan African, and for the global world. And I learned something today. I call it S24 Made in Nigeria, made for Nigerians anywhere across the globe, made for Africans anywhere across the globe, and to the global audience. Now, let's explore that in a way that would kind of give insight on changing the media landscape or the media ecosystem to better, just instead of relying on just maybe government regulations and all of that, like you said, we can all use our phones or other devices to actually do storytelling in a better way.
I think
In what ways do you think we can change storytelling? Not the community media that is chasing clouds or clickbait or something like that. In what ways can we change the media ecosystem to a better way that with or without government support, you can do better in terms of
I think
storytelling?
it all starts from telling trusted stories. Whatever form of this news, information, is that if you if you put your effort into making sure that you're accountable, that if you get things wrong, you correct it. You're not there just to, as you say, to produce clickbait headlines, but there's actually a solid set of values there about trust and accountability. That's the starting point. Then you've really just got to get lots of content out. And I think using every platform that you can, pragmatically looking at them and saying, how can we engage with these platforms? What kind of feedback are we getting from people? So there is no simple answer other than create lots of content, get lots of stories out there, and start to figure out and track. And we can do that now more easily because we've got the AI and we've got the metrics that come with,
Technology.
yeah, and the reporting that comes with your YouTube channel and then your social media accounts. They've all got metrics that you can look at there, but don't make that your motivation for producer for telling a story.
Mhm.
That's secondary to having a good story to tell. So if you feel good and as an individual, and if you feel good as a group about the story that you're trying to tell, and it's important because it might be a challenging story, it might shift and change people's perceptions, it might change policy, but if you're certain that it's got an integrity to that story, then you should tell it.
For new or rural media organizations like S24 Television and looking to partner with people who've built credibility over time, what approach do you think we can?
Well, I think they should be learning from you rather than the other way around.
Oh,
I think the big institutions have got to rethink themselves. I think holding on to how things have been done for the last 50 years is not going to be productive in the future. And that you've got the nimbleness and you've got the drive and the energy to set something up in a different way that's cost effective, that's responsible, that's responsive. That's something that they don't have the opportunity to do because they have to go through their committees, they have to go through their structures, they have to get approval for things. So yes, there's a lot can be learned in terms of how to map. You go through various stages. So they call it, forming, storming and forming.
storming and
Yeah.
forming.
So the first stage is when all your ideas are being put into the mix. And then at some point you've got to sit down and you've got to make that work as a process so it can carry on into the future. But the early stage is the exciting stage for me when I've worked on things, when you've got those new technologies, you've got people coming in with different ideas, you're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. But then at some point you need to hand that over to people who can turn it into a routine and an efficient routine so that you're not wasting time doing things. But it's got some, it can last for a longer period of time. It isn't just a flash in the pan. It can be around for a long time.
Thank you so much. I think maybe finally, or there will be one more question after that for me, because it's interesting to know your background in the media tech, which was not the conventional media space before you got into other branches of the media. If you were to say something to our audience right now about changing the media landscape or ecosystem into something better, evolving every day, just like you've mentioned, big corporations need to learn from us, what would that message be?
It's usually just have a go. It's don't be afraid. Don't try and make it. Don't try and be perfect. Make your mistakes. Do things. The next version of what you do can always be done better.
Better.
So it's like if you think that it's got to be perfect or it's got to be of a professional standard before you can do something, you'll never do it. So start early. Start doing things simply. Make your own mistakes first, but keep getting things out. Keep putting the content out there.
Thank you. So you mentioned something, anything worth doing, and you
Oh,
ended it with, and
if
I really want you
anything,
to
so
share
so this
that.
we'll leave this for your viewers. If anything's worth doing, it's worth doing. And you answered that question by saying
It's what doing well.
you said do it well,
Yeah.
and I said no, doing it badly. because if you can do it badly, you can always improve, and that's what people want to see. It's like they don't expect you to be perfect, but as you grow and as you bring more and you learn, then you get better at it, and people appreciate that.
Thank you. Let's leave our viewers with this because it's interesting. I feel like this conversation should be done out of the phone as well. So I'll just ask you, if you're to choose between electronic and print media, which will you prioritize?
Oh, if I had to print,
Print. Why?
I'd read a book on a I'd read a book. Um, but it doesn't make any difference. My head is awash with all forms of media these days.
Yeah.
But if it push came to shove, I can sit on a beach with a book.
And one last message to the world, if you've got any.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about S24 and more about the Nigerian entrepreneurial spirit that's driving it.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing speaking to you. And that'll be all on just random conversation with random people. Funnily, I've met Mr. Rob through Mr. John virtually or by word of mouth. And today it's been an amazing conversation. And I look forward to doing more of this with people all across the world and saying that there will be another conversation with Mr. Rob in the nearest future. Thank you and bye for now.